Hello and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live session. My name is Dan Taylor and I am a partner and head of technical SEO at SALT.agency. Today, I want to just be going over a very top level topic which is indirectly related to SEO, but for me is quite important to the future and sustainability of SEO as an industry, as a marketing practice, and ultimately how we can continue to deliver real value for our clients and growth in meaningful ways. That is how quickly I think users, consumers, the general masses will actually start to adopt AI technologies and normalize them as part of their daily routines, parts of their discovery processes with how they purchase products, discover information, and create NTB, so new to brand touch points. I'm going to go through a handful of slides. This isn't going to be a long kind of webinar, but I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well in the comment sections on YouTube if you're watching this as a playback. Or please do feel free just to DM me directly on LinkedIn. More conversations about this are needed in the industry, and I'd love to hear all your thoughts. So without further ado, I want you just to pop some slides next to my head, and I kind of want to go through why I've got some of these thoughts and why I think are important. So first off about how impactful will AI be to SEO, to marketing? How will it be impactful to user bases? So if we start off immediately with a good statistic, and I do take this statistic with a strong pinch of salt. The main reason being, in 2016, Cisco published a statistic that 40-50% of all search by 2020 would be voice search. 2020 has been and gone, and it's nowhere near that. But according to Gartner, Gartner have predicted that search engine volume will drop by 25% by 2026 due to the usage and uptake of AI chatbots and other virtual agents. So just to clear some terminology here, search engine volume, we're not necessarily talking monthly search volumes here, although that might be the case. We're actually just talking 1 in 4 people who usually or otherwise would have started a journey potentially through what we would classify as a search engine will decrease by 1 in 4, so 25% by 2026. This opens up the door for in what is, in my opinion, a redundant debate, and that is things like, are things like TikTok a search engine? No, TikTok isn't a search engine. It's a platform that has discovery capabilities. It is very different to a search engine. Just because people start searching on there doesn't make it a search engine. If we want to call it search engines because it's how we can sell it and commoditize it and whatnot to mass markets, that's different to what an actual definition is. 1 in 4 will start using TikTok, they'll use Amazon, they'll use Meta AI, they'll start to use other platforms to do this. So if we're that as a starting point, we're going to lose 1 in 4 supposedly by 2026. 1 in 4 is a significant percentage. Some sectors it may be higher, some sectors it may well be lower. An interesting one on another webinar that I've done recently, and kind of research piece, is that in amongst e-commerce and general shopping, 50% of users actually start on Amazon and only about 33% start on Google. However, amongst Generation Z, it's about 38% Google, 36% Amazon. So there is significant generational shifts in how people start these journeys, and there's going to be significant shifts as well across different sectors, different interaction types, and how people passively spend their time and normalize on the internet. So if we go back to adoption of AI, adoption needs to cover over a number of different things. There needs to be a certain set of criteria for something to become mass market. Now, at present, and according to a KPMG study, which was 17,000 strong across 17 countries, at present, 3 in 5, so 61%, are wary about trusting AI systems. And then to further that, 67%, so 2/3 of people surveyed, have a low to moderate acceptance of AI. It is still very much in that early stage, people feeling out, seeing out whether or not they want to do the adoption. We need to remember that a lot of technologies start off on this way, even slightly less technologies if you think things will evolve as well. So AI as it is may evolve further and become higher in terms of adoption. Great example of it historically is Netflix. Netflix, I believe, started as Love Film. I Love Film. I did used to have it as a child, but you basically had mail order DVDs coming to you, kind of rivaling the Blockbuster model then. they became a streaming service. They evolved mass market adoption. There's going to be evolution in AI, and there's going to be further changes to these percentages. So if we actually want to tie this back directly to adoption, let's use the bell curve. Anyone who's done any form of marketing qualification will be aware of what the bell curve is, but for those who aren't, essentially, it is a model that says, basically, it's a model that highlights that most new things start off and are adopted by a small percentage of a market before they become mass market. And then your end percentage of your market who adopts it, usually your late majority and laggards. This doesn't mean that your market share falls, it just means your market penetration changes. You never have a solid upward continuous curve of market penetration. This is different to things like product life cycles. Product life cycles will have a natural start and end unless you do things like product life cycle extensions, PLEs, amongst them. An adoption bell curve is essentially you will hit peak at some point, and once you hit peak, your penetration percentage of growth will continue to fall unless you either find new markets or there's mass population boom or something like that, which is out of your control, I guess. At present, AI, in my opinion, is quite heavily in the innovators and early adopters section. You've got obviously people like myself, other people in marketing, curious people, your tech enthusiasts right now, about innovators and early adopters who are using this technology, filling it out, testing it, getting a real feel for what the beta, the baby level entry of this is as it becomes and evolves. In order for this to move, it has to cross the chasm. Now, the chasm is a fantastic notion. I do forget who wrote the book, but Crossing the Chasm is a fantastic marketing book to read. It will come to me hopefully by the end of this webinar. But essentially, in order for it to cross the chasm, it needs to cross into market majority. It needs to have that wider adoption. And a lot of businesses and new products tend to fail here because they don't cross the chasm. However, with AI, there is such a substantial amount of investment going into it, roll out across just everything. That chasm crossing is becoming smaller and smaller and will happen sooner and sooner, in my opinion, especially with things like Rufus being rolled out now across Amazon, Meta AI rolling out across different elements, Google's AI overview rollout. Just through sheer penetration and visibility, there will become normalization and you'll get that crossover into the early majority. That's when as marketers, realistically, and even as SEOs, we're going to start to see that real impact on our metrics, how our clients behave, how people shop, because right now it's only a small percentage of the market. This relies on two things. So another concept I want to introduce here is the Overton window. Anyone who's watched Billions will be familiar with this, and anyone who's really involved in the political sphere will be familiar with this, but I'm going to use this in a marketing sense. In a political sense, the Overton window is used to judge policy and whether or not a policy becoming universally accepted to some degree, always starts off as being either unthinkable, radical, then it becomes slightly acceptable, becomes sensible, and then it's just like, hey, this is done thing. AI is going to have to follow a similar trait. Adoption of AI is going to be, and it will be unthinkable or radical for some segments before it kind of becomes acceptable, sensible. But in order for it to actually achieve that, it needs to do something else, which a lot of products have to do. And that is they have to achieve and reduce disutility in the current program. So by disutility, systems that we currently use, whether or not it's purchase, research, or something, have friction points, they have downfalls, they create this utility. A great example that Rory Sutherland uses of this is with Transport for London, in the sense that investment into the Transport for London system to improve rail service in times and whatever they try to do up north in the UK with Northern Rail, it's continuously to try and reduce disutility, reduce commuter time, reduce delays, reduce latency. The more AI and AI tooling and generative AI systems can show they actually reduce disutility without greatly inconveniencing the current user journeys, current user decision processes, it will start to cross that chasm more and more. A great example of this is cell phones and mobile phones. So way back when, in 1980, mobile phones had a global market saturation rate of 0.02%. In the first 20 years, from 1980 to the year 2000, it grew from 0.02% to 8%. Then, costs came down, infrastructure improved. It kind of became more normal, more accepted for people to use smartphones. There was a lot of negative propaganda around them, health concerns, everything else, which goes on with a lot of new emerging technologies. But then for 20 years, from 2000 to 2020, they went from 8% to 97.5% saturation. And I think the statistic now is that there's over 100% saturation based on the number of phone contracts and the phones in service to actually the population of the Earth. So that phenomenal uplift came, and that came from crossing the chasm, achieving a level of normal acceptance, universal acceptance, and showing that in what is an evolving society, an evolving marketplace of higher acceptance, owning a smartphone and owning a mobile phone vastly reduced the disutility of not having one and encouraged in that sense. If we then look at that in terms of AI and how even early internet access used to be, all trends are cyclical. We see that in fashion, we see that in technologies and production. So 3D cinema is a great example. 3D cinema came around in the 80s. Infrastructure was far too expensive. It was too expensive to film in 3D, far too expensive to have 3D production equipment. It wasn't valued high enough by the user audience to warrant paying extra. Failed. Same happened again in the 90s. Same happened again around 10 years ago. It's going to keep coming back around until eventually it finds our sweet spot. It achieves that market penetration, crosses the chasm. In the early days of the internet, we had Netscape Navigator, we had AOL, we had a few other portals, essentially. Anyone who's ever watched the Amazon hit series *Halt and Catch Fire*, that focuses quite heavily around internet portals in the early days of the internet in that stage. We've had portals before. The argument of Google becoming more of a portal being a bad thing is just a cyclical trend. If AI starts to be more portal in this way and do heavier personalization, we've kind of had this before. The early internet was built around this. We also used to have things in the UK like CFAX and teletext on the television. Portal information system isn't a new thing. It's just a different methodology, different distribution system and delivery system of content. With AI, with cookies or anything else, the level of personalization in this can greatly increase. And we can actually see something like this potentially, in my opinion, coming back around and having that level of adoption and normalization again. Again, if this does happen, this greatly changes interaction with the internet, greatly changes our interaction with all content. For example, if this was a personalized screen for me, I might have a couple of modules or widgets on there around certain sports, which means I no longer have to perform a search, which reduces the exposure to certain publishers, to other aggregators, etc. So it's all about understanding how that relationship the consumer has with the internet and how the relationship will change with just general digital assets and information discovery. When it comes to purchase journeys, in one generation, we've had more disruption to the purchase journey than we have at any other point over the past 100 years in history, probably more than 100 years. Let's go back to 1995. You wanted to go shopping, so you would do research. You'd either pick up a product catalog, you'd probably go on CFAX or teletext holidays through your TV. If you were fortunate to have a computer, you might use very, very early internet on like Windows 95. But mostly, you'd probably go out to a store. You'd go to shopping centres. You'd do like almost in-person reconnaissance. You'll buy signals, and then you'd either do mail order through a catalogue, mail order to a store, or just buy directly. Buying something off the internet and having it delivered at home was very early days still at the time. Now that methodology of going to a store, ordering through a catalogue or mail order in that way, that is a model that's existed for over 100 years. And in the space of 30 years, we've gone from normalizing internet research, normalizing internet shopping, to normalizing app shopping and shopping on a smartphone, and even voice commerce now is becoming more thing. So in that space of one generation, we've greatly enhanced and changed how we interact with that single, essentially, purchasing and researching decision-making process. AI is going to further evolve this, and mass market seems to be adopting these pretty quickly and normalizing around that sense. So that's another consideration we need to make in regards to how that moves forward. What this essentially can mean with AI, and especially what we're seeing with AI overviews, Amazon Rufus, that research process will change. Google and other marketers have always spoken about the messy middle. We talk about funnels, we talk about informational queries through to transactional and commercial and how people follow a certain pathway. AI has the potential to take people from point A all the way to the end process, cutting out a lot of that middle ground. Now, if in that middle ground, is where you're targeting certain content pieces and certain members of your SOM slam TAM, your obtainable, addressable, serviceable markets, and your total addressable markets. And you're reliant on this for repeat brand touch points, new to brand touch points, your NTBs and RTBs. If AI is bypassing that, your first notion of that issue is going to happen when you stop having leads and sales coming in. You need to be cognizant now of understanding what your user journeys look like, or how your audience interacts with the internet, how your audience interacts with what their purchasing decision is, and understanding that if they're missing a touch point further upstream, you're going to see that downstream. But you need to be prepared to be able to modify that upstream and try to maximize touch points, whether or not that's through traditional organic or actually better understanding where people go. So as SEOs and as organic marketers, we actually have a lot of data which we can feed back into the wider marketing mix and actually create more holistic organic journeys. This is, like I said, the quackery of whether or not TikTok is a search engine or anything like that. It doesn't really matter. We still need platform and channel specialists, but we need more cohesive and collective data sharing around user journeys. For example, if we look at men's shoes and women's shoes as search topics on the internet, so this is through a tool called Glimpse. So if we look at men's shoes, target markets and portraits who shop and search for men's shoes, those users tend to over-index on Facebook and Instagram, with Pinterest being third, which is great. So that means we know if we're selling men's shoes, we want to be all the traditional channels like your organic, traditional SEO channels, your paid, probably some Facebook in there as well, and some Instagram. Conversely, if we look at women's shoes, Instagram is replaced by TikTok, and TikTok is then the top kind of element in that. I'm just going to make this slide slightly bigger for everyone who can actually see better. So as you can see here, TikTok is lesser than Facebook for men's, but it's similar there. So it's a more distributed audience base who are searching for that topic. So understanding this, we can then feed this data back in. We understand the search terms people are using, but this also helps tell us, well, if people are searching for men's shoes and Meta AI comes into play, how likely is our target market going to use Meta AI? How much are they using it? How much traffic are coming from the LLMs to our website, to our touch points anyway? And we can actually then to start to understand that user journey better and actually create more holistic, as I said, holistic organic strategies that kind of go, well, upstream, we're going to lose some interaction here because that Facebook touch point is going to take it away through Meta. So therefore, we need to be better at understanding how we can get back new to brand or repeat brand touch points further around the section. Another really good way of this is to try to map out that customer journey. So this can follow on and actually show how different elements work. So an example I've been using quite a lot in a lot of talks is that around coffee machines. And I'm reliably informed by Coffee Enthusiast at SALT that this is a genuine journey and kind of questions you'd ask. So you'd start off searching for coffee machines, and historically you might then go to like espresso and non-espresso based. You might look at domestic or commercial use. You might go through ground versus whole bean. There's going to be a plethora of factors that go into this. You might have an existing knowledge of coffee and coffee machines. You might be a complete coffee novice. You might have a limited knowledge based on the stuff that you see the baristas doing, Costa and Starbucks. Either way, you're going to enter this journey at a different point. And then you're going to finally decide at some point, well, am I going to want plumbed or self-contained? Am I going to want pod or capsule? Etc., etc. So it's going to work in different paths. However, now you may end up with a position now where, say, you're going down that coffee machine route and you're looking at espresso versus non-espresso based. Rufus might appear, and Rufus might then go, well, actually, if you want this, here is an option for you, and just throw the ISO Alex HX2. You're then not going to go down the rest of that route. So if you came to that previously, which some users might have, you might have gone down the pod versus capsule route. You might have gone down the plumbed versus self-contained. There's different touch point opportunities that your brand may have had and may have acquired, which could have been display retargeting, could have been newsletter signups, could have been making the user aware that your brand exists. So even though they may not purchase the coffee machine from you, they may purchase other sundries and pods from you further down the line, or for accessories, etc., to certain products. Similarly, Google on the left, that might introduce or change the information around the pod versus capsule route. So historically, you might have just jumped straight to what product you wanted from there. Right, I want this pod thing here, but then that might introduce the concept of, well, do you want plumbed or self-contained? At which point you can go, well, if I get plumbed, what's the benefit versus self-contained? And then you start to do comparative analysis over the product benefits to yourself in that area. So the more research-driven and open and simple the queries are, the more you're going to have likes of Google, Rufus just interrupting that journey directly, let alone people moving towards using LLMs directly as information sources. So we carry this on and come back to that notion of disutility. So users will more quickly adopt these technologies the more they're exposed to them, and the more these technologies show they can improve what the user is trying to achieve and reduce disutility across their entire experiences. I hope that you found this useful. I've really enjoyed you being here with me. Please do continue to let me know your comments down in the comment section, DMing me directly. If you're watching this either as a playback on LinkedIn, do drop me a DM with the questions just so I can actually make sure I get them, and I will endeavour to respond to you. And likewise, if you're watching this playback on YouTube, please also just drop the comments there. If you're on YouTube, I would appreciate a like to the video. Everything helps the channel. And if you consider subscribing to the SALT YouTube channel and the SALT LinkedIn as well, for more videos like this, other article shares and other elements. I'd love to get you all involved in more. And thank you very much for watching.